Hi, this is Sam.
And we're helping him make an animated short film
about autism acceptance.
So today we're meeting one of the co-creators of Sam the Hedgehog, Julia Smuts-Louw. She's also the scriptwriter on the project. Welcome, Julia. Good to have
everybody.
you.
Thanks for having me.
So Julia lives in Cape Town, so we've got her on Skype for today. First of all, do you want to tell us who you are and what you normally do?
Yeah, so Sam is not too different from what I normally do. Screenwriting is something that I've been doing since about 2014. I was in advertising before that. I write for animation and a feature script, poetry, a novel manuscript, short stories, kids' books. Sparksflew Development Studio, that's a trading name for myself and my husband and the projects that we do side of kind of day jobs.
What drew you to Sam in the beginning?
I was still working in advertising, and my boyfriend at the time, now husband, was working in animation, and I just noticed that he was having a lot more fun than I was. So I was starting to look for side projects that I could work on, and there were a lot of us in that position, people who wanted to do a project of their own, something that could be a calling card.
Including us. Yes.
That they could really stretch themselves creatively on. So Dan, being the enterprising soul that he is, got all these people together in a room, and you and Joe introduced the idea of a hedgehog representing autistic people, because you'd been speaking to David O'Sullivan and to your wife, who's an OT, about how to use animation for autism. And I loved the idea. I thought it was very strong, and offered to come in with you guys and develop it a little bit and see if it had some legs.
And I remember it because we were in the boardroom of the new animation school, Joburg campus, and they didn't have any students yet. It was before
That's right. It was a brand new animation school.
Yes.
That's like 7 years ago.
I know, right?
Yeah, animation has these long time horizons. It's just something you have to get used to.
I think we have a lot of people following the project that don't know much about the industry or how animation works. So could you perhaps just walk us through the process of writing the script for this short film?
I don't know. Some of it is always like alchemical. I don't really know what happens. Often it involves like find if there's anything new in the fridge. Anything new on Facebook? No, that's terrible.
Sit in a coffee shop and watch the world go by.
That's actually what I do almost every day. Is I'll go and work in a coffee shop and try and swear the managers on pain of death not to give me the Wi-Fi password.
You obviously start with an idea, and there's a basic premise to this story you want to tell. Do you then start thinking about characters and fleshing out characters, or do you start with a plot and kind of plot out what happens in sequence, or how do you go about like taking that idea to a finished script?
Yeah, well, we were lucky enough to secure NVF funding, which meant that we had an editor on board. Julie Hall was our editor, and it was her job to kind of guide us through different phases of the process. They like to start with an outline and then a major turning points document and then first draft, and then you go. I think because we were doing animation, we proposed a slightly different schedule that included a storyboard as one of the deliverables, which I think worked out quite well.
And an animation test.
And an animation test, that's right.
Which was a bit ambitious.
So we started out trying to figure out what we all wanted to do.
Yeah.
And in terms of where I start, I really believe that stories that are character driven tend to be the best ones, and you tend to find joy sooner if you keep reminding yourself to come back to character. Aaron Sorkin says you start with an intention and an obstacle. So what does a character want and what's in their way? And once you know those two things, then everything else can kind of fall out of that. I think I also pitched to you guys quite early on that rather than having a character who's an autistic hedgehog, that we have like more of a metaphor. So he's a hedgehog. And I said, what about if he lives in a world of sheep? So neurotypical people in this world are represented by sheep, and then he's a kind of an outlier because he's a hedgehog. And the one thing that I was very keen on, and that I pitched to you guys, was to do it in rhyme. So in that sense, it's already like a little bit different from a lot of other short films and scripts you find. It's intended to come across almost as if it's a children's book being read aloud, until you reach a certain point, and then you realize there's something different going on here, and it's actually, it's a story about the adults as much as it is about Sam. And
yes, I do remember there was a key point where we went from telling Sam's story to telling his mom's story, and we realized that Sam's not the one with the character arc. His mom is the one with the character arc, and she's the one that changes during the course of the story. And I do remember that as a very key moment.
I mean, that's been a point that's come up. Is like we're telling the story of a neurotypical person more so than the autistic character, because Mrs. Mutan, who's Sam's mother, is our she's our protagonist in the story, and she represents the viewer in a way. But that worked for us on several levels. Firstly, like that's where the story wanted to go, because as you say, the character who has the biggest change is most often the best candidate for a main character. Not always, but most often that's the best candidate for a main character. And then also we discussed it, and we realized, like, we as the creators of the film are all neurotypical, so as much as we would like to speak for autistic people, that's probably something that's best left to autistic filmmakers.
And to me, I realized it's actually quite a universal theme, and it, you can take that exact theme and apply it to gender or race or any other number of
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I had a friend who said he heard the pitch at some event, and he said, this would be a great movie for my daughter. And I said, is your daughter autistic? And he said, no, she's just a little different. She marches to the beat of her own drum, and says, like, he thinks a lot of kids are like that.
Also, just touching on that, I think it's evident from what you've said already that a lot of research went into this.
Well, I spent quite a lot of time in forums online. I know you guys have a lot of links that you made to actually, like, interact with caregivers and so on up in Joke. And the one message that came up a lot was, I wish people hadn't tried to make me normal. And it's really difficult to get right. The jury's still out on whether we have gotten it right or will get it right. We're telling the story of a hedgehog raised among sheep. It's not actually like a one-to-one map of like autism in a neurotypical community. The main thing is to find like an emotional resonance with that experience. It's actually more about trying to find some overlap between Sam's experience as a hedgehog in a world of sheep and this experience of autistic people, which is maybe not getting enough articulation in media and in stories.
What advice would you give to aspiring writers?
I think write a few things and get some feedback on them from people who also write, not from your family. If after having done that you still want to be a writer, I suppose it depends what age you are. You can either enroll in some kind of writing course at tertiary level, or you can just start, if you're working, you can start writing alongside your day job like I did. You can enter competitions. If it's a screenplay, there's a few really good screenplay competitions.
I know you entered the Sam script into the South African Writers Guild Muse Awards.
That's right. We've got our own one, thanks for reminding me, which is the Muse Awards, which is for South African screenwriters. But yeah, Muse is great because you can meet other writers as well. It's a great place to start getting networked. Or you can do what I did, which is to enter Annecy, into the pitch focus there. They've got a couple of pitch focuses at if you're working in animation. I was very lucky to get my pitch for my feature film accepted there, and so I went and pitched to a big room full of producers and people. It was very scary, but it was lots of fun. That's how I kind of started down my road as a feature writer. You might have picked up I am a fan of screenwriting books, so Blake Snyder's Save the Cats, Sid Field's screenplay, Robert McKee's story. Pilar Alessandra wrote one called The Coffee Break Screenwriter. With Matthew Khalil, a South African, has just written a book called The Three Wells of Screenwriting. If you're specifically interested in animation, sign up for Animation Essay.
Yes.
You can go to www.animationessay.org and sign up for the newsletter, join the Facebook group, and you'll find a very, very helpful and supportive community. The industry tends to be very helpful.
So in summary, read, start writing, and network.
Yes, it's a good moment to actually dispel a very common misconception about screenwriting, which is a question I often get. Is like, oh, so you wrote the dialogue? You're the screenwriter. You wrote the dialogue. The screenwriter doesn't just write dialogue; they write everything, including the Johnny goes from the door to the table and picks up a pair of scissors. That's also written by the screenwriter.
And often writing the action is actually more important than the dialogue.
Yeah, because it's part of, well, everything drives the concept, drives the plot, and coming up with the concept and the plot is also the screenwriter's job. So you might have a concept that's brought by somebody else, like a director, and then you'll ask a screenwriter to write a script around a concept, or you could have a screenwriter that comes up with the concepts themselves and generates everything else, all the characters, all the dialogue, all the action, and then takes it to directors and producers, and then they take it over and take all the credit.
Yes. So, yeah. So I mean, I guess from our point of view, all we had that fateful evening in that boardroom was a single sketch of this character, and we had no idea what to do with him or anything. We just knew that autism was part of it, and you're really the one that dreamed up the whole world and the plot and the story that unfolds in this world. So I mean, that's,
you guys kind of let me run with it, which is really cool. You had, you know, the wherewithal to make it happen. I was just like, hey, can I give you some ideas? So that was really cool. You kind of took almost everything that I had to say. You were like, well, that sounds great. Let's do that. Mostly what the job was from there was to whittle stuff down. So we've been whittling down the plot to get it to its essence. I would say this is something that screenwriting and animation particularly has been a blessing, is that it is such a collaborative medium, and it's gotten me out of my little box and into rooms talking to human beings. I think that a lot of beginner writers, and maybe even just writers in general, their craft can end up being their like worst and best friend.
I mean, that's exactly what we've been doing, back and forth between you and myself and Johan and Charles. And if you find the right people to collaborate with, your story will only improve. And I mean, we've had loads of disagreements, but I think ultimately we get to a place where the story is better for it.
Oh my gosh, yes, and you get there so much faster, actually.
Yes. Cool.
That's it. Good luck.
Thanks. Maybe you can just do a sign off, like, I don't know.
Cool, yeah. Visit samthehedgehog.com for more information. Donate. These smart guys have set up a shop front there where you can look at some great Sam products.
And be a fellow collaborator on this project.
Yes, please come and collaborate with us. There's lots of room. And we're looking for 2D animators, juniors and seniors. We're looking for people to do kind of in-betweening and stuff that you can learn on the job and do something good for your reel. And
we're still looking for, I think, 300,000 rand.
Yes, we are looking for some money.
Anybody can help with that.
We are going to get the project done one way or another, but it would be nice if we could also eat. So that would be great.
Cool.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
Bye.